Hey everyone, it's Brandon here with another build. So today we're going to make a motion sensor light up UFO that we can use for ghost hunting. And there's really two parts to this. If you don't care about it being a UFO and you just want to make a motion sensor that lights up, we'll show you that piece first. But then for a couple extra bucks, if you want to make it real cool and stylish and make it into that UFO, I'll show you how to do that next. And that's what I've been kind of looking forward to. So we'll just start with an inventory of parts here. So our first piece that we need for the motion sensor section is a push light. So this is just one of those closet push lamps. We have a LED strip of lights. These do have a USB end. This is a 5-volt set of lights. What I like about this one is it has 85 different light modes. So you can change the color, the speed, how it rotates, and it does remember your last setting. So if you pick something that you like, it will remember that next time you turn it on. So this one doesn't have a remote control, which is great because we just want to put it in our device and have it remember what we wanted it to do. Next here is the PIR motion sensor. So that will actually be what picks up the motion and will set off kind of the chain reaction to get the lights going. Now this is also a 5-volt and both ends here are USB ends. Here we have a little adapter piece. So this is taking the male end. So this is a female end here, and then it goes to the red and black cords at the end. So this is once again 5-volt, and this will be what will kind of hook up to our push light, and then we'll hook this end up into our light strip, and that's what will give us the light control when we power it on. So those are the pieces that you'd really need just for making it a motion sensor that lights up. Some tools that you could use as well. We have electrical tape for kind of putting the cords together. Scissors you may need just for cutting the electrical tape. And then we'll kind of get into the next part, which is the fun stuff for the UFO. Other tools that you will need. You'll need a drill just to kind of drill through this, I guess, as well for that motion sensor. And wire cutters is good if you have one. Otherwise, you could also just use scissors and a sharp knife. But that'll be a little bit more work, and a screwdriver. So that's kind of the tools for that piece. Some extra stuff for the UFO. If you have a hot glue gun and hot glue, you can use that. Otherwise, if you have other glue you'd like to use, you can try that as well. And I'll kind of go through the other pieces for the UFO now. So over here, and then I guess I can talk about the price. So over here for the motion sensor part, I got this push light at Goodwill for 99 cents, so pretty cheap there. The more expensive pieces to that build would be the light strip. This was about $16, and the motion sensor was about $9. This little adapter you can get for $3 or $4. So overall, you're talking $25, $30 for that, which isn't too bad. A lot of times if you see these UFOs online, they're 60, 70 bucks with a coupon if you're going to buy it from a ghost store. So that's pretty cheap, especially if you can find things cheap like the motion light there. But for the other pieces here to add on to make it a little bit cooler as the UFO, I got these little serving plates for picnics at the Dollar Tree. It was a set of 4 of these for $1.25, so we'll use 2 of those for our build here. We also have this little desk organizer. I'm going to use that. I also got it at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. And then if you want, you can do some different spray paints to kind of make it stand out. It's up to you. That's kind of where some extra cost would be, is if you want to do spray painting, but you don't have to, or you can make it all one color. I just wanted to have a little bit more fun with it, so I got some kind of color shift spray here that's a little glittery, some neon green for my UFO, and then I'm also going to put on a little bit of glow-in-the-dark spray. So we'll make it kind of interesting, but overall that's the parts, and it's not very expensive, and this is a really easy build. The only other thing that I have out here is some Velcro. We'll use that to just attach the push light to the plates here. And then I have just a piece of foam or styrofoam that was lying around from one of my deliveries I got. We'll use this and we'll cut it to the shape of this UFO plate, and that'll just help make the lights a little bit smoother since these are kind of beveled we'll just have that light strip go around where it's a little bit more flat, and that way it'll look a little bit cooler. So that is our inventory, and we'll get rolling with the build. All right, so I cleared a lot of that stuff out of our way, and we'll kind of start with just the parts that we were going to use for the motion detector and make it light up. So one additional thing you'll need for that push light is 4 AA batteries. We won't use those yet, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So to start, this, like I said, is just a push light for a closet. We are going to convert it and end up using this as kind of our switch to turn it on and our power source for the lights. So just a way to kind of repurpose something cheap to make something cool. So there are 4 screws in the back of this. We'll start by unscrewing those and taking it apart. Now the one thing to know is, since it clicks and kind of pushes up and down, there are springs inside. So there's just 3 springs in here. But make sure when you take this apart, you're kind of in a confined space and you do it slowly so springs don't go everywhere and then you're hunting for those. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll just take those out and then show you what it looks like. All right, so I unscrewed those 4 screws. A couple stuck in here, but if you want to take them out all the way, that's fine. But they're just tiny little Phillips screws. And there are 3 springs, as I mentioned, that go in here. If they fell out while you're screwing it, I'll show you where those go back in if yours is similar to mine. And then there's a couple pieces here. So there's the frame here, and then this is the light up piece, but inside you can see it's empty, but there is this piece of cardboard on here that helps hold down the springs so don't destroy this. We'll probably take it off when we're putting in the motion sensor, but we want to keep that for when we put it back together. Now for the springs, if yours fell out, there are a couple spots here. They're just these little caves here that you can just stick those in. These screws are a little bit wider than your normal like pen spring or anything like that, so try not to lose them, because if you find a replacement it might not be the same. And then there's this little peg here at the bottom. You can just slide that on there. So that's ultimately what it would look like when it's all together and ready to be put back together. Now what we are planning on doing here is we have our battery compartments. We have the power that runs up to the switch. So when you push down on that push light, that's what makes the click here. And then it runs up to this light bulb, and that light bulb will turn on when there's power. So my plan here is to cut these wires here and then hook that up to this USB piece. So then we'll have that, and then once we turn the power on, we should have power through this USB that will then run into the motion sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, start with these 2 wires. If you have a wire cutters, that would be the best. Just note that if you are cutting wires, to check the size of these first, so you don't just chomp through them if you're trying to strip the wire. So first we are going to cut the wires off completely. So if you haven't used a wire cutters before, or just need a reminder, on the inside here is the sharp part that will just cut them in half, and then each of these sizes will help you strip the wire. So if you want a little bit, kind of like these ones show on the end, so that way you can tie them together to have the power run. So what I'm going to do next is just cut these 2 that are closest to the light bulb. Alright, so I went ahead and cut my wires here. Those were closest to the light bulb. I did remove the light bulb here. We will not need it for this build since we're going to use the LED light strip. So then the next step here would just be to strip the ends of these wires so they are bare, and then we can go ahead and match those up with this USB cord and get those taped together. If you don't have a wire cutters, you could use a sharp knife. Just be very careful as you're kind of cutting off the red plastic around the wire, and then you could do that as well. But wire cutters are good if you have one handy. Alright, so I went ahead and used my wire strippers, and I did strip the ends off of these 2 wires. So you can see they have the exposed ends now. And now what we are going to do is take this USB end, and we're going to just kind of tie these together, and then we'll electric tape around them. If you do have any of those little caps that you can screw on, you can do that too. or any way to hook these together, but you just want to make sure they're secure. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. And then once they're all done, we'll just tape it up a little extra just to make sure if we pull on it, it won't rip these apart. So I will go ahead and use my electrical tape. I'm going to cut off a piece for each side and get working on those. All right, so I have my wires here. I'm kind of lining them up next to each other. I'm going to go ahead and twist these wires together as best I can so they really make some good contact and they're all linked up. And then once they're really twisted together, we can just use some electrical tape here, and we'll start with one end to get them stuck so they don't move. Then we can go around to kind of tighten these up. And we're going to do it a few times here, and then we'll do it to the other side as well. So I'll pause here, and I'm going to get those taped together. All right, so I went ahead and I taped both of those, and now I'm going to go ahead and tape them both together, and I'm going to try to bend them over and then tape them back to this cord, because the reason I'm kind of bending them and taping them back is right now if you tugged on these, it's more likely to come apart than if they had another break point. So bending these over and taping it to this USB cord will make it just a little bit stronger and less likely to fall apart. So I'm just going to take these two first, tape them together, then bend them over and tape them to that USB cord. All right, so I got my wires taped up. So here you can see each one was taped up, and then I taped it back to this USB cord just so it's a little bit stronger here and won't pull out as easy. Now, I did add a little bit of hot glue because my terminal was a little bit loose. You won't have to do that if yours is fine. But then, just for your awareness too, from the USB cord, I used the black wire and attached it over here to that battery terminal, and then the red wire attached to the one coming from the switch. Now, one thing I recommend doing before you go too far or put all this together is just temporarily hook it up to make sure that your lights work. So I did put in the batteries behind here, and I'm going to take that USB hookup that we just attached. I will put on my motion sensor, and then I'm going to hook that motion sensor to my lights. And now you'll get to see kind of what the lights do and how this works. So when we push down on the top of that push light, it's going to push this switch, and you can see our lights are going off. Like I said, there's tons of settings you can go through and click through. I like all the multicolor and spinning around a little bit. But I have it set for about 10 seconds, and I'll show you how to set that timer for how long these lights go in just a moment. So you can see it went off. Now if I go close to that motion sensor, the lights kick on again. So everything's working, it's got power, that's a great sign. If at this point you don't have power, go and look at your connections again. Really the only thing that you had to check would be your connections from this box to your USB cable. So just make sure nothing broke or came loose. So we're going to look at the motion detector now. And this motion sensor, if we pop off the back, we'll see this little blue square. Now this has where you can put in a Phillips screwdriver. That is what determines how long your lights stay on. So doesn't really tell you that. Most of the time the instructions won't tell you that either. But you can put in your screwdriver and twist it one way or the other and then test your lights. Just see how long it stays on. Because it goes anywhere, I think, from like 10 seconds up to a minute and a half. So I have mine set as low as I really can, which is about 10 seconds. So once you have that set up the way you want, you can go ahead and put this back on and just kind of snap it together. And then on top, let me get this last snap. This bulb is what will detect the motion, and this is what's going to stick up through the top of our dome, and that way it can pick up any motion that goes around. All right, next what we're going to look at is where that motion detector will go through. So it's going to go through the top of this dome that we have. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to take off the backing here. This is just like a cardboard backing. We don't want to destroy it though, because we do want to use it, and that's what kind of pushes down the switch on and off. So you'll have to work around here and kind of peel it off. It's just an adhesive glue, so if you need more later to stick it back on, you can. But we'll just kind of pull that off here. And then what we're going to do is end up taking our drill and drilling a hole through that's about the size of this bulb. And if you want, you can kind of use this as a template even, put it on here, try to find the center point, and then figure out the width that you want to drill it. So I'd start out small, work your way up till it kind of fits right through, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I finished drilling the hole into the top of the lid. You want it as close of a circle as you can get. It's not perfect, but one thing you can do too is if you don't have a big enough drill bit, you can use either an X-Acto knife or a utility knife or even woodworking tools to kind of smooth out the circle or to make it a little bit larger. So now once that's done, I can go ahead and take my motion sensor and fit it through. And this one is actually just perfect that it pops right in and I don't even have to glue it. But eventually I think what I will do when I'm ready is add a little hot glue just to the top of this so it does stick to the lid and doesn't fall in later. So that should be set up. We can test it too, just to make sure everything's still working. So I do have batteries in the base here. I'm going to go ahead and hook up my USB and then hook up my lights. Now I hooked everything up, so the motion sensor is hooked up to the lights and the motion sensor is hooked up to the base, and there is batteries in this base. So now I'm going to turn on the power and we can see the lights are going. So we're going to just let that go until it shuts off. It should be about 10 seconds based off of the setting I have. So I'll just quick pause here and then we'll wait for the lights to go off. All right, the light went off after a few seconds. Now I'm going to just wave past the motion detector and we can see that it did work and it set the lights off again. So that's working great. We have power, everything's working, motion sensor's still working. So we'll go on to our next step. All right, now for this next step, if you're really just planning on making a motion sensor with lights, we can kind of end in a little bit here. So the last few steps of that is we do have, you know, the frame here to go around our base. We'll make sure we put our springs back in and screw it together. But what you would do in this instance is once you have this kind of back together, you would have all of your cords tucked in either the top part of the dome, and then you can stick this back onto it. So it kind of contain a lot of the cords right in the top. Otherwise, you can fit them around here as well. But the one thing you'd want to do is you'd need a way for the lights to go probably on the outside of this border. So simple, easy thing to do would just be to drill a hole and you could unplug your lights, make sure that cord fits through, but then you can kind of stuff the cords in there and then you would take this and your light would come out and you'd wrap it around. The back is an adhesive strip so you can peel that off, but you'd wrap it around as far as you want and where it kind of matches up back here, and then you would just cut in the cut lines. So these copper kind of looking lines here, that's where you would cut right down the middle, and that way the rest of the lights wouldn't light up, just where you cut it would still go. So that's kind of what you would do. You would hook this all back up, have that motion sensor inside, and then you'd have this mounted to the base, and then you'd just have those lights around the side. And that way when you push down and it turns on, you would be able to activate these lights with the motion sensor. So pretty cool. But we want to make this a little bit more unique, a little more UFO-y for our ghost hunting. So what I'm going to do next is take this back apart real quick. And I would like to get some color on some of this as well. So I will do some spray painting. I think I will probably paint the top here of this dome the neon green, and then put some glow-in-the-dark paint over the top of it. And then for this frame, I will put some of that glittery black type of spray. And then we have the other pieces. And I'll kind of show you what I'm going to do overall. So these two plates I'll also spray with the glittery black spray. So kind of on these sides because it'll look more UFO shaped. And you can see it's open through the middle, so we will run some of our cords if need be. We can run them through here for the lights. And then I also had that piece of foam. So this is really going to go in the center. We'll make a circle of this and have it like that. But what this is going to help do is just give a flat way all the way around for the lights to go. So the inside of the foam, I think I'm also going to spray with the neon green. And then the last kind of piece that I would have is this little tray. But I want it to be a little more like a UFO beaming something up. So I'm going to spray this also with the neon green and probably put some glow-in-the-dark paint on this and maybe on the inside foam. So like I said, this was pretty cheap. This was probably less than $5 total, probably like $4 or so to do this. So it's just a little bit more stuff that you can add to it, and it would make it look pretty cool. So at the end, once we have it all together, you know, we'll have the dome up here running through. We'll have the little tray underneath. It'll all be painted, and that way when you do the motion sensor, the lights would go around on the UFO. So I think I'm going to do some spray painting here, and then we'll come back and we can do some more assembly. So before I forget, one thing you can do before you're ready to spray paint, you can just take one of these plates and your piece of foam, and all I'm going to do is just draw a circle around here and then cut out the foam to make sure it matches the same size as this plate. So overall, not too hard. If you don't have a piece of foam lying around, you can use something else. If you have thick cardboard or anything, just find something to work. It's mostly just because of the lights that I want flat. If you tried to put the lights around on the curved part, your lights are going to start bunching. So this will make it a little bit easier to do. All right, so I finished my spray painting. Just a couple things to note after experiencing some things with that. The color shift spray, which is really cool, you do need a base coat of something. So in case I didn't say that before, this one does say apply over a black base coat. Really what this can is it's just sparkles. So you can spray it over anything, but the darker the color, like the cap here, the better reflection you'll get of that shine. I also tried the glow-in-the-dark spray. This one works pretty good. It retains the glow for a while, but it's not a very bright glow. So if you're looking for something more intense than this, I recommend, I got this Ultimate Glow 10 times paint. So I used this and painted it on in addition to kind of spraying it. So you can choose which ones work best. I used a combination of them all. And then for that color shift spray, I just had some black paint. So this was the one I used for underneath the shimmer. All right, so now that I kind of went over that stuff, I want to show you what everything looks like. So we can start with the plates. And these actually turned out really well. So you can see with the black spray and the color shift, it really shines nice. So it looks a lot better than just the plain blue plate. We got a little bit of sparkle here for our UFO. Same with the second plate, turned out well also. And then we sprayed the top here. This is kind of the part that holds the dome. This also has the color shift spray. Looks really nice there. The bottom, this will be what kind of holds up our whole thing, was that little office supply tray. So I sprayed this with the fluorescent green, and then I did the fluorescent spray on it, but then I also went ahead and painted that glow paint, and I painted it on kind of to fill up the holes. That way it just retains the glow even more. And then once I finished it, I did spray it with that color shift sparkle. Just give it a little life when it is not glowing, because otherwise it's kind of dull. So this just kind of brightens it up a little bit. And then finally, the top dome. So this one I also did in the green fluorescent spray. Sprayed it with the fluorescent glow spray, but then I did some coats of the paint glow and then finished it off with the color shift shine. So overall, it looks pretty neat. One thing you could do as well, if you wanted to, would be to put like a protective top coat on this, just so none of this chips off. But that's if you want to put in, you know, a little more expensive if you have some available. I did not, but I could always do that later as well if I wanted to. But we're going to start now just with the top. So we're going to go back to our dome, which is here, and our cover, and then our base. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is, if we go back to the green base that we cut the hole in for the motion sensor, I'm going to go and take my motion sensor and I'm just going to add a little hot glue around it and get it to stick right in here. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to glue that in to hold it in place. All right, one other thing I can show you while the hot glue gun is warming up is that foam circle. So I had this cut out. I sprayed it with the fluorescent green spray. I put a black kind of border on and made it black just a little bit to the inside too, so when I put those plates on, you won't see the green. And then I did coat this with some glow spray and glow paint as well. So then when we have the plates on top and bottom, you'll see the green glowing from inside the UFO. So that's what I have there. All right, so I did hot glue that in. Doesn't take much hot glue, just a little bit to get it to stick. And now we're gonna go ahead and kind of get the cords put together. And remember, we do have that sticky piece here that we're gonna put back on. So if we get too crowded with cords, you will want to run it through the hole. But first we're gonna just kind of hook up our USBs again. So let me set this down here. So I can go ahead and hook this one in and hook this one in as well. And like I said, if we have too many cords here, we can always unhook it and then put it through that hole. So what we're going to do is try to keep them in the lid as best we can. So we're going to kind of wrap these around and get them tight. I think I will unhook these first, run them through that piece of plastic, and then try to push them in. Or the cardboard, I should say, not plastic. So we'll just run these through. So that way they're on. And then we'll hook these back up again. So it might take a little work to kind of move these around to get them to fit good, but that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to just try to, once again, wrap these in as best I can, and then get as much of the cordage as I can in here, and then stick this back on. So I will do that next. All right, so I got a lot of the cords inside of the cover. I did align that cardboard cover with the screw holes here for the plastic. So just make sure that all lines up, otherwise you'll be screwing through the cardboard if you don't. But the next thing I'm going to do here is unhook the LED light. So you're just gonna push in on this button, pull this out. So what I'm going to do is actually try to run this through the bottom of my base. And where I can do that a little bit easier is right where they have the wall mount. So you'll see this is where your nail or screw goes for the wall. This we can get to fit in here if we just kind of remove this tab. So whether you want to, you know, use a pliers and break it off, or a little saw, or even drill it through, you can. Just try not to break the base when you do it. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm just going to kind of remove this piece of plastic, and that way we can run our lights right through. All right, so I went ahead and I removed that plastic tab. Like I said, you can use whatever tool you have handy. I actually had a tile cutters lying around too, so that was easy. I could just grab it and pinch it off. So that's what I did there, and you can see that tab just popped off. So now this should be big enough that it's just enough that we can weasel our lights through that hole. And we're going to try to push that in. And it's, like I said, just enough that we got it through. Now the reason that we're running it through is we're going to run the lights out of this base down to the outside of our UFO. So that's why we had to run it through here. So now I can go ahead and just connect this back up. So just make sure you're lining these up here. There we go. And now that is all set up and ready to go. All right, so now that we have this partially together, we're gonna finish putting this top dome back together. So try to get this stuck on as well as you can, but we're gonna go ahead and get our edge piece, and we're gonna line that up with those screw holes, so everything should match up. And then once we get that in there, it'll kind of push forward. Then we're going to go ahead and get this screwed back to the base. So you will have to kind of work the cords a little bit to go around the battery pack to fit it all together. So I'm going to do that next, and then I'm going to go ahead and screw this all to make it a base, and then our LED lights will come out the bottom. And before you screw it together, of course, don't forget those 3 springs. Get those back into those spots where they go, and then screw it together. So don't forget those, otherwise it won't switch on and off. All right, so I went ahead and got that together. Now, if you're having any trouble with getting this base screwed back on, take a moment, go back and look at your cords. Try to get as much as you can into that top part above the cardboard, because anything that's really up here won't impact you getting this screwed back together, so that helps. And also make sure you're able to still push the top down enough to get your lights on. So you should be able to kind of feel where your switch is, and you can hear it click. If it lights up, good. If you can click it and goes off, perfect. So that's what you want. It doesn't have to be like it was with the push lights. It's still going to be pretty tough with all these cords in there. But as long as you can push on it, get the light on, push on it, get the light off, and you can kind of feel where your switch is. So mine's right here, so it's a lot easier to just do a quick touch in that one spot, because you're really just pushing down so that little switch goes off. All right, so now that we got it together here, our motion sensor's in here, we have our lights running through. I would recommend, if you haven't tested, please make sure your lights still work. So go ahead, put your batteries back in, and then you can also put your battery cover back on. Now, eventually, when we go to attach this to our plates or the top part of the saucer, we're going to just put a piece of Velcro on here to Velcro it to the other piece, because that way, if the batteries eventually die, we can just rip it off, change our batteries, and put it back on. So I'm going to next kind of take a look at our UFO top. All right, so next I'm going to unspool my LED lights. So I'm going to take them off of the wheel, and that way we will go ahead and be able to have this end, which is a little bit smaller than using that whole wheel. And we're going to grab one of our saucer plates. And you can really choose any of the slots here. We're just going to run the cord through here and run it down. And we're going to just kind of keep pulling that through all the way till we get back to our base. So just be careful not to, wreck your plate. Try not to wreck the paint on it as best you can. And then once we have it, we're going to pick this up and try to just lower it down. So this is kind of what we will have, if you can see that all right. We'll have that top, and that's what will Velcro to this other piece here. So right kind of in the middle is where we'll end up putting that Velcro. But before we do that, I'm just going to leave this on, and I'm going to take a look and see how the lights are going to run. So I'm going to kind of look at whether I can run that across the foam, or if I want to possibly cut the foam or anything like that to kind of run these through. So I'll take a look and see what I want to do. All right, so I kind of measured out the lights to see how much I'd need, but when I kind of run these to the side, there'll be about 3 lights here that you'll see inside the UFO. So since I don't want it blinking inside the UFO, just on the outside, I'm going to just put a little bit of black electrical tape over each of these 3 lights. And then to make it a little flush here, I might just make a little slot here in this foam, just enough that I can kind of tuck the light in a little bit and then run it around. Because if I left it on top, it might bulge out a little bit. So just cut a little bit to kind of slide these lights into. So I'll show you that in just a moment. All right, so I went and got my LED lights on. So, like I said, I went through that little slot. I took off the strip off the back so the adhesive would show. I ran it all the way around the foam, and then I cut it right through those copper lines, so that line right down those 3 little copper spots. And I did just tack the end on with a little piece of hot glue here, but overall, it stuck really well to the painted foam. And then if you just push your light on, you can see we now have a working top half of a UFO here. So the next thing I'm going to do is work on the bottom half, but before I do, I'm going to just put a ring of hot glue on the foam, and then I'm going to attach this plate to it. So that'll hold this all together. And like I said, the top, we still have it loose because we're going to add in a piece of Velcro later on. All right, so I went ahead and just added that hot glue, so now my plate is stuck right to the foam. So next part we are going to do is we're going to work on the bottom. So for the bottom, we have the little office tray here, and we have the other plate. So I think first I'll probably take the plate and glue that to the underside of my top half of the UFO. Now, if this keeps getting in the way or falling off, you can go ahead and add some Velcro now. We can do that too. So all you're going to do is just cut a piece that'll kind of go on the battery cover and a piece that'll probably go in that middle circle there, just so it sticks on. So I'll go ahead and cut some Velcro first, get that stuck, and then we can do the bottom piece. Alright, so for the Velcro pieces, I had some 1-inch Velcro. I just cut a couple circles out. So one is the soft side, one is the hook side. So I'm going to put one piece on the bottom of my base of this dome, and then the other part on the top here of this UFO. And then we can just kind of stick those together and it'll hold it in place a little bit more. So I'm just going to get those stuck on there. Alright, so I went ahead and got the Velcro on. So you can see here I put the rough side down here right in the middle circle, and then I lightly set the soft side hook to this one, so that way I could kind of center my dome, push it on, and then have it stick to the top side so I know kind of where it would line up, and then just stick it on there. So a little cheat there on getting it in the right spot. But then yeah, we can go ahead and get that Velcroed on, and that way this will stay together a little bit more. Alright, so next we have our plate. We want to go ahead and just like we did on the top part, we're going to put a ring of hot glue around the edge, and then we're going to stick it to the underside on the foam. So that'll kind of make our saucer shape for our UFO. Alright, so I went ahead and I got that bottom glued on. Just one thing to note, I tried to match up the holes in the plate, so there's kind of these slots on the sides. So I tried to line them up kind of like windows for my UFO. But I'm going to flip this over and just show you that the bottom is now hot glued on as well. And I kind of like that green glow in the middle. So once we get this all together, we'll take a look at that too, and we'll light this thing up with some UV light. Alright, so then the last part here is just to hook on our little office tray. And what this is kind of supposed to look like is kind of like they're beaming things up. So that's why we kind of have it with the pattern here. And hopefully it glows pretty good now that we filled up all those holes. Alright, so this next part's going to be the easy part. We're just going to take our UFO, and on the bottom here, we're going to add some hot glue here, and then we're going to add some hot glue to the top of this office supply tray. So you could add some into the spokes just to give it a little more adhesive there. So whatever works the best for you. But then yeah, we'll have our cool little UFO, and then we'll check it out. Alright, so I went ahead and I got the bottom on here now, so it looks like it's beaming something up. But overall, this is our completed UFO. So we have our top with the motion sensor, the green will glow, same with the green inside. We have our LED lights running around the side, and then we have our little glowing beam at the bottom. So pretty cool for just a little motion sensor. And then if we want, we can go ahead and light this up. And that's what our UFO will look like. So I will take this now, hit it with some UV light, and we'll test the motion sensor out in a dark room and just show you what it looks like when the lights are off. Alright, so here is our UFO. You can see it's glowing on top. We got the beam glowing up on the bottom. Looks pretty neat. Now with the motion sensor, if I move a little bit closer, it'll set it off, and we get our lights going. So overall, really cool. I'm glad that it turned out the way it did, and this was pretty cheap to make. So if you had the, just the push light, it's fine, but I think this looks a lot cooler with a little bit of paint and the extra cost there. But overall, if you want to make it super cheap, you can make it for like 30 bucks. Otherwise, the paint obviously adds some more effects here. So I hope you liked my build. Let me know if you enjoyed it. If you have other ideas, put them in the comments too. I like doing these. I got a few other ideas in the works of some things I might make. But if you like my videos, please subscribe. I also have a Patreon, or you could buy me a coffee. It's much appreciated. And thank you until the next video.